So hi, I'm Andy Carvel. I work at SoundCloud, working on growth topics. I'm currently leading a retention team. So, like a team of 5 people focused purely on user retention. I was here last year. I was actually super sick last year, but I came and I presented some stuff about growth and a framework that I've been working on, and it was really well received, despite the fact that I was really sick and coughing my way through the talk. So I'm feeling a bit better this year. So hopefully I'll make myself a little bit better understood. I'm here to talk about growth. I'll talk a little bit about the framework that I've developed and present an update to it this year, and also give some examples of how we're approaching growth at SoundCloud and applying some of the principles in that framework. This slide here, it's basically to show like some of the things, some examples of things that we do at SoundCloud and some of the technologies which are relevant in the space, but also to show that growth is a pretty complex topic, particularly on mobile. There's a lot of different technologies out there, a lot of different channels, and it's a very fast-moving space. So for that reason, last year I presented this what I call the mobile growth stack, which is my attempt to kind of organize and basically to organize thinking around growth and to help growth marketers to think about growth in a holistic and strategic manner. So very briefly, the stack is split into 3 main layers: acquisition, engagement and retention, and monetization, underpinned by a solid layer of analytics. I really do believe that analytics and measurement is really key to most of the growth efforts, and things should be experimental and done with measurement and scaling, testing and scaling what works. On the right-hand side, there are 2 vertical columns, which are activities which I believe are kind of themes that cut right through the stack, cut through the different layers. So retargeting can be used to bring back users who maybe didn't download the app. They must have downloaded the app, but it's bringing people back in who are maybe right at the top of the funnel, not very engaged, bringing back to do more engagement, or, maybe people who've abandoned a cart, for example, and bringing them back to do a conversion step. So it's really applicable to all areas of the funnel. And international, it's a huge topic, but it's really about a lot more than just translating your app. It's really about how to grow in new markets. And I've sort of worked on a few of these areas over the last 4 years at SoundCloud. So that was last year. And I published a blog post to go with this, which was up on Medium, which has been very well received throughout the industry. So this is an example. The guy from Gram Games, their CMO, came up to me at a conference recently, earlier this year, and showed me this. So on the left-hand side, that's my mobile growth stack, which they're actually using to drive their development process at Gram Games, which is a game studio in Turkey. It turns out they know what they're doing with growth as well. They've had a very successful title called 1010, which has been up near the top of the games charts for about a year now. Also, Greylock Partners organized a workshop for some of their portfolio companies over in the US, using the growth stack as the sort of foundation for that workshop, where they look deeply at what technical tools and what technologies their portfolio companies were using to drive activities in different areas of the stack. So basically, it was very well received within the industry, which is a great feedback for me and very humbling. Was really nice to see. So this year, over the last year, I've been thinking a lot about how to evolve the stack and, basically how to improve it from what I presented last year. So this is the 2015 edition. So I apologize in advance, it's even more complex. But I'll take you through that basically over the next 10 minutes and call out some of the changes and some of the thinking behind what I've done to evolve it. And, of course, it's an evolving framework, and I'd really appreciate the input and thoughts from everyone in the room. We can catch up afterwards because really growth is really a team sport, and everyone's trying to figure this stuff out. It's a complex topic, and it's a fairly new topic. This intersection of product and marketing. Nobody's got everything figured out. Like, this is my attempt to bring some order to the situation, but I'd really appreciate the input of anyone who's working on or thinking about this topic as to how we can work together to bring a bit more discipline to the practice of growth. So very briefly, I've broken out channels and really tried to make a separation between channels and activities, because like what I had in the initial stack, that I was sort of conflating sometimes things like welcome emails with first-time user experience. So kind of bringing examples of like specific use cases into the stack itself. This time I've really tried to keep the core stack about activities rather than channels, and break out channels as a separate layer, because actually you can often apply multiple different channels to a specific activity. I've also built out the analytics layer a bit, but I'll call out some specific examples of how things have changed now. So yeah, as I mentioned, channels are not the same as tactics. So I've built out this layer. This is like, of course, not an exhaustive list of channels, but I think these are the channels which are probably most relevant to marketers working in mobile today. So push notifications, most people know about. In-app messaging, I think, is like very underutilized as a channel. And in my experience, over the last year, in-app messaging is the killer channel for mobile. Of course, it can only work if the user is actually engaged in your app. So it's no good for acquiring users, and it's no good for reactivating users. But if the user is in your app and you want to drive them to more conversion or to a specific type of engagement, then in-app messaging is really awesome. So the difference between push and in-app messaging: push is something that you send to a user when they're and they receive it when they're outside of the app. And in-app messaging is a dialogue that can pop up. You can generally configure exactly how that looks. You can make it look very native. But the really key difference is that the marketer is in control of like when that dialogue's displayed, who you're targeting, what the call to action is, and you can build and test and modify these messages and these dialogues like outside of your regular development framework, which is really the way to move fast on mobile when you've got like long release times and like dev schedules. You really don't want to be building that stuff natively, in my opinion. So yeah, that's a bit about the channels. I've added even more analytics stuff to the stack because I really do believe that analytics is the cornerstone of any serious growth effort on mobile. So the things in yellow are brand new, and the things in green are things where I've like condensed or changed something from the old stack. So performance analysis, I moved bug tracking into the performance analysis box because it's basically pretty related. I've added deep link attribution because I think deep linking is like probably the main thing that's really come of age in 2015. And it's really important to better understand how your deep links are working, where people are being driven to inside of the app. And then on the right-hand side, some sort of kind of core analytics competencies for growth. If you've got an app with content in it, you're a content platform of any sort, then content analytics is going to be really key. So that's really understanding what content's performing, which content is viral, what content are users spending the most time on, because then, of course, you want to make more of that content or acquire more of that content. Growth accounting, so this idea of like really understanding what is your growth rate, what is your churn rate, what is your like average session length, how many sessions are users having, and breaking that down by cohorts and segments ideally as well. And then growth modeling, this idea of like actually understanding what are the biggest opportunities for growth as an app developer by understanding, what are the dynamics like. What is your retention rate? What is your acquisition rate? What would happen if you were able to acquire 5% more users next month? How would that mean for your user number development over time versus, for example, increasing retention by 1%? A lot of companies can't answer those questions. So yeah, it's really about analyzing all the things. So in the acquisition layer, I've added content indexing as a brand new box. So this is indexing content from like that's within your app, that it's discoverable in mobile web search. So if people are searching on mobile, content is now indexable. So Google have Google App Links, I think it's called. Oh, sorry, it's Facebook App Links. Google App Indexing, and also like Apple with iOS 9 released like the sort of extended iOS 9 search. So basically there's a lot more ways for people to discover your content from outside of your app and get deep linked right into it. So it's basically the new SEO. PR, I broke out as a separate box. It used to be part of like, I think I had PR and social as one box. I think PR is an activity in its own right in a different discipline to content marketing, for example. distribution deals. I think it used to be called partnerships. I've actually created a third column called partnerships because I think partnerships is something that can apply right across the stack. But I've called it out specifically in acquisition because they can be a really big part of an acquisition strategy to do pre-install deals or other forms of kind of bulk acquisition through partnering or traffic exchange. So a couple of examples of things we're doing at SoundCloud on the acquisition front. So Facebook app invites is something that we've been experimenting with. It's a channel that's not working great for us right now, but it's bringing in some additional viral traffic. So it's something that we'll continue to iterate on. Google app indexing, I already mentioned. So this is the idea. This is just an example. So if you search for Skrillex in Google, even on an iOS device, this is not Android specific, then you get it kind of figures out, okay, does Skrillex have any profiles on other sites, whatever? So SoundCloud's listed there. If you click on that link, and if you already have the app installed, it'll take you straight to Skrillex's profile inside the SoundCloud app. Talking about engagement and retention. Sorry, it's a bit of a crackle there. So retention and engagement is something I've been focusing on for like the last 6 months or so, specifically around retention, thinking a lot about churn reduction and how to keep users coming back for more sessions, increasing general activity. Engagement and retention are inextricably linked, in my opinion. If you don't have an engaging app, you can't retain users over the long time. So yeah, I've broken this section out a little bit as well. I've added a new cell for this idea of like data persistence, user accounts, this idea of like giving a user some more permanence within your app and your experience, that as a sort of a lever for bringing them back more often and maybe building up a barrier to deinstall because the user's more invested in your experience if they create an account or create a profile. So I would say it's worth considering having some kind of account creation or profile dynamic in your app, even if strictly speaking you don't need it, because if it's a purely transactional app where the user really gets the same unpersonalized experience every time that they log in, then they're less incentivized to reinstall the app if they switch devices or to come back to the app time and time again. First-time user experience, massively important. I'll talk about that a little more. And I've broken out mobile CRM from last year into lifecycle marketing and activity notifications, which I consider to be quite distinct topics. So yeah, just on the retention curve issue. So the really top apps are able to like flatten out their retention curve higher up. The basically means that more users are retained over the long term because they're basically more effective at onboarding. Yeah, hang on one sec. Okay, sorry about that. Looks like it was my fault the way I was attaching this mic. Yeah, so basically the best apps are just better at onboarding users in the first few days. As you see, the curve is basically the same. This is how we approach retention at SoundCloud. It's really about building a growth machine, getting users into a loop of kind of regular activity and helping to build habits around the product. And we do this in an experimental way. We use control groups for everything that we do so that we understand the effect of what we're doing versus everything else that's happening on the platform. We do lifecycle campaigns. So we use in-app messaging. This is an example of in-app messaging, actually. Excuse me. Sorry about this. Okay, I think it's stopped. Yeah, so these are examples of in-app campaigns that we use to try to encourage users on the onboarding. Sorry, we have some problems here. Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm just going to speak into the main mic. Activity notifications, I mentioned before. So these are sort of more real-time notifications. We've recently rolled out an activity notification system at SoundCloud, so we're delivering a lot more push notifications than we used to on iOS, for example. And I'm going to speed up a little now because I realize I'm almost out of time. So yeah, I mentioned already deep linking. Deep linking is super important, and it's going to just become more and more important, at least for apps which have a strong content element to them. And finally, monetization. I sort of thought a lot about monetization. It's a big topic for SoundCloud this year. We're rolling out new monetization methods as well. So it really just comes down to, for me, this idea that most apps are either merchandising in terms of like the way that they're selling in-app purchases, possibly with virtual goods, or they're doing some kind of advertising, like serving ads within their product, and so it's a lot about ad inventory management. And then, so specifically around SoundCloud, we have native ad formats such as the promoted track. So artists or labels can promote a specific piece of content within the app, and this is completely native to the SoundCloud format, so it feels very natural in the app. And we also have like more traditional advertisements. We work directly with brands such as Squarespace to have these sort of like takeover interstitial visual ads, and we also have audio ads, which again is quite a native format for us. So that's how SoundCloud is monetizing, and you probably haven't seen this stuff because it's live in the US mostly. Promoted tracks I think is everywhere, but the visual display stuff currently only in the US market. Right, so thanks a lot. I'm bang on time, I think. So I've covered all of this in a lot more detail in a blog post which I published last night. There's a link to it, a redirect actually. If you just go to mobilegrowthstack.com, you'll see that blog post in detail. I apologize, it's even longer than this talk. It's about a 15-minute read. But there's lots of stuff in there and some good examples, hopefully. So thanks a lot for listening. You've been very patient. Thanks.